The Zephyrian ship called Harmony's Light was dying in the cold darkness of space. Captain Veltar pressed his thin fingers against the emergency controls as his ship shook and groaned around him. The beautiful crystal walls that made up his vessel were cracking, letting the precious air escape into the void. Veltar was nothing like a human. His body was tall and thin, made of what looked like living glass that glowed with soft blue light. His people, the Zephyrians, came from a world where nothing bad ever happened. Their planet had gentle breezes instead of storms, and the most dangerous animal was smaller than a human's thumb. They had never known war, never built weapons, never even raised their voices in anger. Now they were going to die because of that kindness. The Korthek. Ships circled around them like hungry wolves. These aliens were everything the Zephyrians were. Not. They were big, ugly, and covered in thick armor-like skin. They lived for fighting and killing. Their ships looked like flying weapons, all sharp edges and gun barrels. They had been chasing Harmony's Light for 3 days, playing with it like a cat plays with a mouse. Veltar knew his ship could not run anymore. The engines were broken, the shields were failing, and half his crew was already unconscious from breathing the thin air. He had only one choice left. His 4 fingers touched the distress beacon that would send out a cry for help across the galaxy. The message was simple and desperate. It said in the common galactic language, "This is a peaceful research ship. We are trapped and dying. Our ship is breaking apart. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We have no weapons. We cannot fight. We are just scientists trying to learn about the stars. Please help us." The signal flew across space faster than light, reaching every corner of the galaxy in minutes. On Earth, in a space station that orbited high above the blue and green planet, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was working the night shift. He was a former soldier, 32 years old, with short brown hair and the kind of eyes that had seen too much fighting. He was monitoring the deep space radio when the alien signal came through. Jake sat up straight in his chair as his computer translated the message. An alien ship was in trouble, and from the sound of it, they were about to die. He quickly traced where the signal came from and felt his stomach drop. The coordinates put the ship right in the middle of space, controlled by the Korthek marauders. Jake had read the files on the Korthek. They were bad news, really bad news. They treated other species like animals to be hunted. They would keep their victims alive as long as possible, just to enjoy their fear. Jake grabbed his communication device and called his boss. "Admiral Grant, you need to see this right away. We have a situation." Admiral Lisa Grant was in her office when the call came. She was 55 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and scars on her hands from her time as a fighter pilot. She had fought in Earth's last big war and knew what real combat looked like. When Jake explained what he had found, she came to the command center right away. "Show me everything," she said. Looking at the screens that displayed the alien distress call, Jake pulled up all the information they had. "The ship sending the signal is called Harmony's Light. Based on our scans, it belongs to a species we've never met before called Zephyrians. They seem to be completely peaceful. No weapons, no military technology, nothing that could hurt anyone." Admiral Grant studied the tactical display. "And they're being hunted by the Korthek." "Yes, ma'am. 3 Korthek destroyers have them surrounded. From what we can tell, the alien ship will lose life support in about 6 hours, maybe less." The Admiral was quiet for a moment, thinking. Earth had only recently learned how to travel faster than light. Most of the galaxy still thought humans were primitive and weak. The smart thing to do would be to stay out of galactic politics and let someone else handle the problem. But Lisa Grant had not become an admiral by making the smart choice when lives were at stake. What about the Galactic Council? She asked. "Surely they'll send help." Jake checked his other screens. "I've been monitoring their communications. The Altarian hegemony said it's not worth the cost to save an unknown species. The Nexus Collective ran the numbers and decided the rescue mission would probably fail. Even the Celestial Federation, who are supposed to be the good guys, said their fleets are too valuable to risk. Grant felt anger building in her chest. She had read about the Galactic Council. They were supposed to keep peace and protect innocent species. Instead, they were willing to let people die because it was inconvenient to save them. "Ma'am," Jake said quietly, "there's something else." We're the only ones who answered the distress call. Every other species in the galaxy heard that message, and we're the only ones who said we'd help. The Admiral made her decision. "Get me Captain Rodriguez on the Phoenix and Commander Sullivan on the Ranger. Tell them to prep for immediate departure." "We're going in." Jake looked surprised. "Ma'am, are you sure?" "The Korthik have 3 destroyers. We'd be outnumbered." Lisa Grant smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just decided to hunt. "Jake, let me tell you something about humans that the rest of the galaxy hasn't figured out yet. We didn't become the top species on Earth by running away from fights. We became the top species by being meaner, tougher, and more stubborn than everything else that wanted to kill us." She turned to look out the window at Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from space, all blue oceans and white clouds. But Grant knew better. Earth was a death world, a planet that had spent millions of years trying to kill everything that lived on it. Ice ages, volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, diseases, and predators that could tear apart anything they caught. Humans had survived all of it. More than survived, they had thrived. They had turned Earth's deadly nature into their own strength. Other species in the galaxy came from gentle worlds where survival was easy. Humans came from a world where survival was a daily battle. Besides, Grant added, the Zephyrians asked for help from anyone willing to protect peaceful species. That's us. We might be new to this galaxy, but we're not new to protecting people who can't protect themselves. Within an hour, 2 human warships were preparing to jump to hyperspace. The U's Phoenix was humanity's newest heavy cruiser, built tough and loaded with weapons designed during Earth's violent history. The UES Ranger was smaller but faster, designed to hit hard and get out before the enemy could respond. Captain Ben Rodriguez commanded the Phoenix. He was 41 years old, a veteran of the South American conflicts who had learned to fight in jungles where everything was trying to kill you. Commander Kate Sullivan led the Ranger. She was younger, 36, but she had grown up in the ruins of Detroit and knew how to survive when civilization broke down around you. Both ships carried crews that had been selected for one specific trait. They were all volunteers who had signed up knowing they might have to fight aliens to protect innocent people they had never met. As the ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, Admiral Grant sent one final message to the rest of the galaxy. It was simple and direct. "This is Admiral Lisa Grant of the United Earth Space Force. We have received a distress call from the vessel Harmony's Light. Human ships are responding immediately. Any vessel that interferes with our rescue mission will be considered hostile." The message was broadcast on all galactic frequencies. Every species that had ignored the Zephyrian plea for help would know that the primitive humans from the small blue planet were willing to fight 3 Korthak destroyers to save complete strangers. Most of the galaxy thought humans were crazy for taking such a risk. They were about to learn that crazy was exactly what made humans so dangerous. The human ships dropped out of hyperspace like angry hornets entering a fight. Captain Ben Rodriguez sat in the command chair of the Phoenix, his dark eyes scanning the tactical displays as the scene unfolded before them. 3 massive Korthak destroyers circled around a small, beautiful ship that looked like it was made of crystal and starlight. The Zephyrian vessel Harmony's Light was clearly dying. Chunks of its hull were missing, and Rodriguez could see atmosphere leaking out in frozen streams. The alien ship was maybe a quarter the size of his cruiser, and it had no weapons at all. It was like watching wolves circle a wounded deer. Commander Kate Sullivan's voice crackled over the communication system from her ship, the Ranger. "Ben, are you seeing this? Those Korthik ships are just playing with them." Rodriguez nodded grimly. The enemy destroyers were taking turns firing at the Zephyrian ship, but they were not trying to destroy it quickly. They were enjoying the hunt, making it last as long as possible. Each shot was carefully aimed to cause damage without killing. The crew immediately. The Korthik ships were ugly things, built like flying fortresses. They were dark gray metal covered in spikes and weapon ports. Everything about them screamed violence and cruelty. Rodriguez had studied the intelligence files on the Korthik during the journey here. They were a species that lived for war and conquest. They thought peaceful races were weak and deserved to be destroyed. Lieutenant Sam Parker, the Phoenix's tactical officer, looked up from his station. He was a young man, maybe 28, with steady hands and cold eyes. He had grown up in the gang wars of Neo Detroit, where you learned to shoot straight or you died young. "Captain, I count 47 weapon systems on those 3 ships," Parker reported. "They outgun us pretty badly." Rodriguez almost smiled. Sam was thinking like someone who had never fought a real war. In a real war, it was not about who had more guns, it was about who was willing to use them better. "Open a channel to all Korthak vessels," Rodriguez ordered. The communication officer, a woman named Betty Cole, worked her controls. She had served on cargo ships for 15 years before joining the military, and she knew how to make alien technology work with human systems. "Channel open, sir." Rodriguez stood up and spoke in a calm, clear voice. "Korthik vessels, this is Captain Ben Rodriguez of the United Earthship Phoenix. You are attacking the civilian research vessel. Withdraw immediately, and no harm will come to you." The response came back almost instantly. It was a sound like rocks grinding together, translated into English by the ship's computer. The voice belonged to War Leader Gaxtok, commander of the Korthak hunting pack. "Humans." The alien's voice was full of contempt and amusement. "We know of your pathetic species. You have barely learned to leave your little world. You will flee now, or we will add your ships to our collection of trophies." Rodriguez looked around his bridge at his crew. These were men and women who had volunteered to fly into unknown danger to save complete strangers. They were farmers' kids from Iowa, street fighters from Chicago, mechanics from Texas, and computer programmers from California. What they all had in common was a willingness to fight when fighting was needed. "Negative, Korthik," Rodriguez replied, his voice still calm. "This is your final warning. Withdraw or face the consequences." Yakstok's laughter sounded like metal being scraped against stone. "You dare threaten us, human? We have conquered 17 systems. We have destroyed civilizations that were traveling the stars when your species was still living in caves. What can one small ship do against 3 destroyers?" Rodriguez felt something cold settle in his stomach. It was not fear. It was the feeling he always got right before a fight started. The feeling that said it was time to show these aliens what humans were really capable of. "You're about to find out," he said quietly. Without another word, the lead Korthak destroyer opened fire. Bright green plasma bolts streaked across space toward the Phoenix. Rodriguez's ship rolled hard to the left, its engine screaming as it dodged the incoming fire. Some of the plasma bolts hit the Phoenix's shields, making them flare with blue. "Light, all hands battle stations," Rodriguez announced over the ship's intercom. His voice was still calm, like he was ordering lunch instead of starting a fight that could kill them all. "Weapons free. Show them what we learned in the Earth Wars." The Phoenix's response was immediate and devastating. Human weapons technology had been developed through centuries of warfare on a planet where everything wanted to kill you. Railguns fired metal slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Guided missiles used artificial intelligence to think their way past enemy defenses. Laser cannons could cut through armor like hot knives through butter. The first railgun salvo hit the lead Korthik destroyer right in the center of its hull. The alien ship's shields flared and died instantly. The metal slugs punched holes clean through the enemy vessel, sending pieces of armor and equipment spinning away into space. Impossible. Gaxtok's voice came over the communication channel, no longer laughing. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your intelligence was wrong, Rodriguez replied as he ordered another volley. Human weapons are designed to kill things that don't want to die. Commander Sullivan's Ranger was dancing between the larger ships like a boxer fighting heavyweight champions. Her destroyer was smaller and faster than the Korthik vessels, and she used that advantage ruthlessly. The Ranger would streak in, fire a spread of missiles at close range, then dart away before the enemy could respond. Sullivan had grown up in Detroit after the collapse, when the city was run by gangs and survival meant being smarter and meaner than everyone else trying to kill you. She knew how to fight dirty, and she was not ashamed of it. Kate, take out their weapon systems, Rodriguez ordered over the tactical channel. I want them alive to ask questions later. Copy that, Ben. Ranger is going for precision strikes. The second Korthik destroyer tried to ram the Phoenix, hoping to use its superior size to crush the human ship. Rodriguez saw it coming and ordered his helmsman to dive below the enemy vessel. As the Korthik ship passed overhead, the Phoenix fired every weapon it had straight up into the destroyer's belly. The alien ship shuddered and began bleeding atmosphere and debris. Its main engines went dark, leaving it drifting helpless in space. The third Korthik destroyer, seeing two of its companions crippled in less than 10 minutes, began backing away from the fight. Its captain was apparently smarter than Gaxtok. This cannot be happening, Gaxtok transmitted, his voice now full of fear instead of arrogance. Humans are weak. You are primitives. The council reports said you barely have space travel. Rodriguez looked at the tactical display. One Korthik ship was dead in space, the second was crippled and drifting, and the third was running away as fast as its engines could push it. The entire battle had lasted less than 15 minutes. The council was wrong about a lot of things, Rodriguez said into the communication channel. Here's something they didn't tell you about humans. We come from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. We survived by becoming the most dangerous thing on the planet. He paused, watching as rescue shuttles launched from both human ships toward the damaged Zephyrian vessel. And here's something else they didn't tell you. We protect our friends. Any species that threatens innocent beings under our protection will learn what it means to face Earth's children. The last Korthik destroyer jumped to hyperspace, fleeing the system as fast as it could go. Gaxtok's ship was left behind, its crew trapped and helpless. Rodriguez opened a new communication channel, this one directed toward the beautiful Crystal ship that was still leaking air and dying in the cold of space. Zephyrian vessel Harmony's Light. This is Captain Rodriguez of the U's Phoenix. Help is on the way, hold on. The human rescue shuttles moved quickly toward the dying Zephyrian ship. Dr. Amy Chun sat in the lead shuttle, checking her medical equipment one more time. She was 34 years old, with black hair tied back in a practical ponytail, and hands that never stopped moving. She had been an emergency room doctor in New York before joining the space program, and she was used to working under pressure. Remember, she told her team over the shuttle's intercom, we have no idea what these aliens need to survive. Their biology could be completely different from ours. Don't touch anything until we understand what it might do to them. The shuttle pilot, Sergeant Rick Davis, was a former Marine who had flown rescue missions in 3 different wars. He guided the small craft through the debris field around the Zephyrian ship with expert skill. Doc, we're getting close to their airlock, Davis reported. But I'm seeing some weird readings on the sensors. This ship is like nothing I've ever seen before. Through the shuttle's windows, Dr. Chun could see the alien vessel up close for the first time. It was beautiful in a way that human ships never were. The hull looked like it was made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue and green light. Even damaged and dying, it was more like a work of art than a machine. Their technology is completely organic, Chen said, studying her scanner readings. It's like the ship is alive somehow. The airlock connection was tricky because human and Zephyrian technology worked on completely different principles. It took 20 minutes of careful work before the two ships were sealed together, and the rescue team could board the alien vessel. The inside of Harmony's light was even more amazing than the outside. The walls were transparent crystal that showed the stars beyond, but somehow they were also solid enough to hold in the atmosphere. Lights moved through the crystal like slow lightning, and the whole ship hummed with a sound like singing. Dr. Chun stepped carefully into the alien ship, her portable life support unit, analyzing the air around her. Atmosphere is breathable. For humans, she reported. Oxygen, nitrogen, some trace gases we don't recognize. Temperature is a bit cold, but not dangerous. The first Zephyrian they met was waiting for them in what looked like a garden inside the ship. Captain Veltar was tall and thin, about 7 feet high, and his body was made of the same crystal material as his ship. Blue and green lights moved under his transparent skin like slow lightning. When he saw the humans, the patterns of light in his body changed to something that looked like surprise and relief. The translation device on Dr. Chun's belt turned his musical voice into English. "You came," Veltar said, and even through the mechanical translation, Chun could hear the wonder in his voice. "The war hunters spoke the truth. You are predators. But you came to save us." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. He had come aboard the alien ship personally, something that surprised his crew. Most ship captains stayed safe on their own bridges during first contact situations. But Rodriguez was not most captains. "We heard someone in trouble," Rodriguez said simply. "That's all that mattered to us." Veltar's light patterns shifted again, this time to what the translator identified as confusion. But the calculations show it was not logical. The Galactic Council's reports say your species is primitive, barely capable of space travel. They said humans are chaotic, violent, and unpredictable. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, who had come along as the cultural expert, smiled. "They got 2 out of 3 right. We are chaotic and unpredictable, but they missed the important part." "What part is that?" Dr. Chun looked up from her medical scanner, which she was using to check the health of the alien crew. "We're protective," she said, "especially of people who can't protect themselves." As the rescue operation continued, more details came out about how the galaxy really worked. The Zephyrians were one of many peaceful species that lived at the mercy of stronger, more violent civilizations. The Galactic Council was supposed to keep peace, but in practice, they did that by letting the strong do whatever they wanted to the weak. "The Korthik have been growing bolder for years," Veltar explained as human engineers worked to repair his ship's life support systems. "They claim systems that have valuable resources. Then they hunt the people who live there for sport. When peaceful species complain to the Council, they are told it is an internal matter that does not concern galactic law." Admiral Grant, who had arrived on a fast courier ship, felt her anger growing as she listened to the alien captain's story. She was in the Phoenix's conference room, talking to Veltar through a holographic projection system. "How many other species are under threat?" she asked. "Dozens," Veltar replied, his light pattern showing sadness. "Perhaps hundreds. Most peaceful civilizations have learned to avoid regions where the Korthak and other hunter species operate. My people were simply unlucky. We were studying a new star system when they found us." Grant made notes on her electronic pad. Humanity had discovered a galaxy-wide protection racket, where the strong preyed on the weak while the supposedly civilized authorities looked the other way. It was exactly the kind of situation that went against every human instinct for fairness and justice. "Captain Veltar," Grant said formally, "on behalf of the United Earth government, I want to offer you safe escort back to your home system. No species should face extinction just because they choose to be peaceful." The Zephyrian's light patterns shifted to what the computer identified as overwhelming gratitude mixed with disbelief. "You would do this? But you gain nothing from helping. U.S. We have no resources you need, no technology you want, no military power to offer in return. We don't need a reason beyond the fact that you asked for help," Rodriguez said from where he stood beside the holographic projector. Over the next few hours, as human engineers worked to repair the Zephyrian ship, more information came in from Earth's intelligence networks. The rescue had been noticed throughout the galaxy, and the reaction was mixed. Some species were impressed that humans had been willing to fight 3 Korthak destroyers to save strangers. Others were worried that human interference would upset the delicate balance of power that kept the galaxy from falling into total war. The most interesting reactions came from species that most of the galaxy had written off as extinct or irrelevant. Secret messages began reaching Earth's diplomatic channels from civilizations that had been hiding in the shadows, afraid to draw attention to themselves. The Solari were a plant-like species that lived in harmony with their forest worlds. They had lost 3 colonies to Korthak raids in the past 5 years, and the survivors were living in fear. The pelagic chorus were aquatic beings, whose ocean worlds were being slowly poisoned by industrial pirates who dumped toxic waste into their seas. The resonants were crystalline beings similar to the Zephyrians, but their harmonic cities were being harvested by slavers, who sold their crystal components to collectors. All of them had the same message: "Please help us survive." "Captain," Dr. Chun said as she finished treating the last of the wounded Zephyrian crew members, "I think we've started something we can't stop." Rodriguez looked at the messages streaming in from across the galaxy. Dozens of species that had been suffering in silence were suddenly reaching out, hoping that the humans who had saved the Harmony's light might save them too. "Maybe we can't stop it," he said, "but maybe we shouldn't want to." Admiral Grant was thinking the same thing back on Earth, in the secure command center beneath Geneva. She was briefing President Helen Wright and the Global Defense Council on what they had discovered. "The situation is worse than we thought," Grant reported. "The galaxy is full of peaceful species living in terror of predators. The Galactic Council maintains order by sacrificing the weak to keep the strong happy." President Wright, a woman in her 60s who had led her country through 2 economic collapses and a civil war, understood the implications immediately. "And now we've shown them that someone is willing to fight back." "Yes, ma'am. The question is, what do we do about it?" The room was quiet for a long moment. Everyone present understood that humanity stood at a crossroads. They could retreat back to Earth, ignore the pleas for help, and let the galaxy continue as it always had. Or they could step forward and try to change things, knowing that it would make them enemies of some very powerful civilizations. General Carl Johnson, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, spoke first. "If we do nothing, we'll be safe for now. But eventually, the predators will come for us too. They always do. And if we act," President Wright said, "we'll be painting a target on every human world in the galaxy." Admiral Grant looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "Ma'am, with respect, we've been painting targets on ourselves since the day we learned to make fire. The only difference is that now we're painting them in space instead of on Earth." The decision, when it came, was not really a decision at all. It was a recognition of what humanity had always been, a species that protected the weak, even when it was dangerous to do so. "Operation Shield Wall is authorized," President Wright announced. "We're going to build a coalition of species willing to stand up to galactic bullies. And we're going to show the universe that being peaceful doesn't have to mean being helpless. 6 months after the rescue of Harmony's light, everything in the galaxy had changed. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of her ship, the New Horizon, watching as her mixed crew of humans and aliens worked together. The ship had once been a simple cargo hauler moving supplies between Earth's colonies. Now it was humanity's first joint species warship, and Maria was proud of what they had accomplished. Maria was 42 years old, with gray streaks in her brown hair and laugh, lines around her eyes. She had spent 20 years flying cargo ships through dangerous space, dodging pirates and asteroid fields. When the call came for volunteers to command the new integrated vessels, she had signed up immediately. Her navigation officer was a Zephyrian named Cylindra, whose crystal body interfaced directly with the ship's computer systems. The weapons officer was Lieutenant Dave Murphy, a former Army sergeant from Boston who had learned to shoot straight in the gang wars of his youth. The engineering chief was a Solari named Root Singer of Deep Earth, a plant being whose natural understanding of living systems helped keep the ship running. It should not have worked. The species were too different, their technologies too alien to each other. But somehow it did work, and the results were better than anyone had expected. "Captain," Salandra reported, her musical voice carrying through the bridge, "we are receiving a distress signal from the Kepler 186 system. It appears to be from a pelagic chorus colony ship." Maria nodded and moved to the tactical display. The pelagic chorus were the aquatic species whose ocean worlds were being poisoned by industrial pirates. 3 months ago, they had asked humanity for help protecting their refugee ships as they evacuated their dying worlds. "What's the situation?" Maria asked. Lieutenant Murphy checked his sensors and scowled. 4 Korthik raiders have cornered a civilian transport. The pelagic ship has about 3,000 refugees aboard, mostly families with children. Maria felt the familiar cold anger settle in her stomach. The Korthik had not learned their lesson from the first encounter with human ships. They were still attacking peaceful vessels, still treating innocent beings like prey animals. "Set course for Kepler 186, maximum speed," she ordered. "And send a message to Admiral Grant. Tell her we have another Korthik problem." The New Horizon jumped to hyperspace, racing toward the battle. But they were not the only human ship responding to the crisis. Over the past 6 months, Earth had built up a fleet of converted civilian vessels and newly constructed warships. All of them were crewed by volunteers who had signed up to protect species that could not protect themselves. Meanwhile, on the neutral world of Concordia, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. The elegant chamber, where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss galactic law, was filled with angry voices and heated arguments. Counselor Vexnine of the Altarian hegemony stood at the center podium, his scaled hide reflecting his agitation. The Altarians were one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and they were not happy about humanity's growing influence. "This human interference threatens the stability we have maintained for centuries," he declared. To the assembled delegates, "They cannot be allowed to upset the natural order of galactic civilization." Counselor Yith of the Solari delegation rose from her seat. The plant being's bark-like skin was scarred from Korthak attacks on her homeworld, and her voice carried the pain of someone who had lost everything. "The natural order," she said, her words carefully controlled, "that allows genocide as long as the killers are strong enough to avoid consequences. That allows slavers to harvest my people's children as long as they pay the right bribes. That is the order you want to preserve?" The debate raged for hours, but the real issue was clear to everyone in the chamber. The Council's authority had always rested on a simple principle. Some species were strong enough to matter, and others were not. Humanity's protection of the weak challenged that entire system. Counselor Zexta of the Nexus Collective, a cybernetic species that valued logic above all else, presented a detailed analysis of the situation. Human intervention has resulted in a 340% increase in distress calls from previously silent species. Predatory civilizations report significant losses in resources and territory. The probability of continued galactic stability under current conditions is less than 23%. What the Nexus Collective's computers could not calculate was why humans continued to risk their lives for strangers. The logical thing would be to retreat to Earth and let the galaxy sort itself out. Instead, humanity seemed determined to protect every peaceful species they encountered. Back on Earth, Admiral Grant was dealing with the same questions from her own government. In the secure briefing room beneath Geneva, she faced a panel of concerned officials who were worried about the cost of Operation Shield Wall. Senator Paul Washington, chairman of the Senate Defense Committee, pulled up charts showing the military budget. Admiral, we've spent more in the past 6 months than we did in the entire Mars colonization program. We're building ships as fast as our factories can work, and we're still outnumbered by hostile forces. Grant nodded, yes, sir. But we're not trying to match them ship for ship. We're trying to change the rules of the game. How do you mean? Dr. Margaret Ellis, head of the Xenobiology program, stepped forward with her own charts. Senator, our analysis shows that most spacefaring species evolved on what we call garden worlds. Planets with stable climates, gentle weather, and very few environmental pressures. They developed intelligence and technology, but they never developed the survival instincts that drive human behavior. She pointed to a comparison chart showing different planetary environments. Earth is what xenobiologists call a Class 12 death world. That means our planet actively tried to kill everything living on it for millions of years. Humans survived by becoming the ultimate adaptive predator. But we're not just predators, General Carl Johnson added. We're predators with pack instincts. We protect our group, and we consider peaceful species to be part of our group now. Admiral Grant pulled up tactical displays showing human patrol routes throughout the galaxy. The Korthik and other raider species are used to fighting prey animals that run away or surrender quickly. They've never faced organized resistance from species that actually want to fight back. And now they are? Senator Washington asked. More than that, Grant replied. The peaceful species are learning from us. They're discovering that being nonviolent doesn't mean being helpless. The proof of that came 3 hours later when Captain Santos and the New Horizon arrived at the Kepler 186 system. The pelagic Chorus transport ship was still alive, but barely. The 4 Korthak raiders had been taking their time, firing carefully aimed shots to disable systems without destroying the ship completely. But something had changed since the last Korthak attack on a refugee ship. As the New Horizon dropped out of hyperspace, Maria could see that the pelagic vessel was not just waiting to die. Captain, Lieutenant Murphy reported with surprise in his voice, the refugee ship is fighting back. They've modified their sonic communication systems into some kind of weapon. It's disrupting the Korthak targeting computers. On the main screen, Maria could see the beautiful whale-like forms of the pelagic transport ship using abilities that had evolved for underwater communication as defensive weapons. The sonic pulses that normally carried their songs across ocean depths were now jamming enemy sensors and confusing Korthak guidance systems. Looks like they learned something from our last joint training exercise, Maria said with a smile. Dave, target the lead Korthak raider. Let's show them what happens when prey animals learn to bite back. The battle was short and decisive. The Korthak raiders had been expecting to hunt helpless victims, but instead they found themselves facing a coordinated defense by species that refused to be victims anymore. The New Horizons human weapons technology combined with pelagic sonic attacks and Zephyrian sensor disruption to create a tactical nightmare for the attackers out within 20 minutes. 2 Korthak ships were disabled, and the other 2 were retreating at maximum speed. This is War Leader Brack Guff, came the transmission from the fleeing Korthak commander. Human vessel, What have you done to the prey species? They are not supposed to fight back. Maria opened a communication channel to reply. Her voice was calm and professional, but there was steel underneath the politeness. War leader, you seem to misunderstand something important. These are not prey species anymore. They are our allies, and we protect our allies. Any ship that attacks peaceful vessels under our protection will face the consequences. This is impossible, Brakoth replied. Weak species cannot become strong. It is against the natural order. The natural order just changed, Maria said. I suggest you adapt to it. As the New Horizon escorted the pelagic refugee ship to safety, Maria thought about how much the galaxy had changed in just 6 months. Humanity had not just rescued a few ships. They had started a revolution, one that was spreading from system to system as peaceful species learned that they did not have to accept oppression anymore. The predators of the galaxy were about to discover what happened when the prey learned to hunt back. 1 year after Captain Veltar had sent his desperate distress call into the darkness of space, the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UE's Liberty, watching as the largest fleet in human history prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle. The Altarian hegemony had finally decided that humanity's protection of peaceful species had gone too far. They had assembled a massive battle fleet, supported by the Galactic Council's military forces, and issued an ultimatum. Humanity must stop interfering in galactic affairs and withdraw to their own system, or face complete destruction. The confrontation was taking place in the same system where it had all started, Kepler 442, where the Zephyrian ship Harmony's Light had first called for help. It seemed fitting that the revolution that began with one desperate plea would be decided in the same place. Admiral Grant looked at the tactical displays showing the enemy fleet. 300 ships of various sizes, including massive Altarian battle cruisers that were each larger than anything humanity had ever built. The enemy force was commanded by Admiral Zexkoth, a veteran warrior who had crushed 17 different rebellions during his long career. But the human fleet was not alone. Alongside the Earth ships flew vessels from dozens of species that had been written off as weak and helpless just 1 year ago. Zephyrian ships with their crystal hulls now carried human weapons technology. Solari bioships had been modified with defensive systems that could regenerate damage in real time. Pelagic chorus vessels used their sonic abilities to coordinate fleet movements with a precision that amazed human tacticians. Captain Ben Rodriguez was still commanding the Phoenix, now serving as Grant's flagship escort. Commander Kate Sullivan had been promoted to admiral and was leading a strike force of fast destroyers. Captain Maria Santos commanded a squadron of the new integrated ships, each one crewed by multiple species working together. Most importantly, they were no longer fighting just to protect innocent species. They were fighting for a new idea, that strength should be used to defend the weak, not exploit them. Admiral, reported Commander Tony Reeves, Grant's communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the Altarian fleet. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Zexkoth in his command center. The Altarian was an impressive figure, 8 feet tall with scaled skin and 4 arms that ended in clawed hands. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived, and it showed in every line of his powerful body. Admiral Grant, Zexkoth said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. I offer you one final chance to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Your species has shown impressive combat abilities. Join the established order. Accept vassal status under the hegemony, and you will be permitted to rule your own system in peace. Grant studied the alien commander for a long moment. She could see why the Altarians had been successful for so long. They were strong, experienced, and absolutely convinced that might made right. In their view, the strong ruled and the weak served, and that was the natural order of the universe. "Admiral Zexkoth," Grant replied, her voice carrying across all communication channels so that every ship in both fleets could hear her words. "You seem to misunderstand something fundamental about humanity. We didn't come to the stars to bow to tyrants. We came to be free, and to ensure that freedom exists for anyone willing to stand up for it." Zexkoth's expression showed confusion, as if Grant had said something that made no sense to him. "Freedom? You speak of freedom for the weak? The weak exist to serve the strong. That is the way of nature, the way of the universe. You cannot change the fundamental laws of existence." "Watch us," Grant said simply. The battle that followed became known throughout the galaxy as the liberation of Kepler 442, not just because humanity's Deathworlder tactics once again proved devastatingly effective against conventional military thinking, but because it marked the moment when dozens of peaceful species chose to fight back rather than accept oppression. The Altarian fleet attacked in the traditional way, with massive ships advancing information and relying on superior firepower to crush their enemies. It was a strategy that had worked for centuries against species that fought the same way, but the human fleet did not fight like other species. They scattered into small groups that attacked from multiple directions, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the enemy's heavy weapons while striking at weak points. It was a strategy born from Earth's history of smaller armies defeating larger ones through superior tactics and determination. Admiral Sullivan's destroyer squadron struck first, racing past the Altarian heavy cruisers to attack their supply ships and command vessels. The enemy had not expected anyone to target support ships instead of the main battle line, and several key vessels were destroyed before they could react. Captain Santos led her integrated ships in a coordinated assault that combined human weapons with alien abilities in ways that had never been seen before. Zephyrian ships used their crystal hulls to focus human laser weapons into devastating cutting beams. Solari bioships released clouds of specialized organisms that interfered with enemy sensors. Pelagic chorus vessels created sonic fields that disrupted Altarian formation, flying. But the most important moment came when the peaceful species stopped acting like victims and started acting like warriors. A group of Zephyrian research vessels, ships that had never been designed for combat, deliberately rammed an Altarian battlecruiser to prevent it from firing on a human medical ship. Solari cargo haulers used their plant-based technology to entangle enemy vessels in rapidly growing vines. Pelagic civilian transports coordinated their sonic abilities to create a jamming field that blinded an entire enemy squadron. For the first time in galactic history, predator species found themselves outnumbered by their former prey, and the prey had learned to bite back. Admiral Zexkoth watched his carefully planned battle turn into chaos as his traditional tactics failed against an enemy that refused to fight by the established rules. His massive ships, designed to intimidate and overwhelm, found themselves being picked apart by smaller, faster vessels that struck without warning and disappeared before he could respond. "This is impossible," he transmitted on all frequencies, his voice filled with disbelief. "Weak species cannot become strong. Prey animals cannot become predators. It violates every principle of natural selection." Grant's response was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "Admiral, you're still thinking like someone from a garden world. You think strength comes from size and firepower. But real strength comes from protecting what you care about. And we care about every innocent life in this galaxy." The turning point came when Zexkoth's own flagship came under attack from a combined force of human destroyers and alien support ships. The massive Altarian battlecruiser, designed to be invincible, found its shields overwhelmed by weapons that had been designed by species fighting for their survival rather than their conquest. As emergency lights flashed on his bridge and his Ship began to list. Zexkoth made one final transmission. His voice was no longer filled with arrogance and certainty. Instead, it carried the confusion of someone whose entire worldview had just been proven wrong. "We yield," he said simply. "We yield to the Deathworlder Coalition." The name stuck. Within hours, news services throughout the galaxy were using the term to describe the alliance of species that had just defeated the most powerful military force in known space. The Deathworlder Coalition, led by humans but including any species, willing to fight for the principle that might alone did not make right. In the months that followed, the coalition grew rapidly. Species that had hidden in the shadows for generations emerged to join the alliance. Peaceful civilizations that had accepted oppression for centuries began to believe that resistance was possible. Predator species that had lived by preying on the weak found themselves facing organized opposition for the first time in their history. Earth became the unofficial capital of a new kind of galactic civilization, one where survival was earned through cooperation rather than domination. Human ships patrolled space lanes that had been hunting grounds for raiders. Mixed species crews shared knowledge and technology that benefited everyone. Most importantly, a new message was spreading throughout the galaxy. No one had to face extinction alone. Captain Veltar, whose desperate plea had started it all, now served as the Coalition's first ambassador. His crystal ship, fully repaired and upgraded with human defensive technology, carried a simple message to every system he visited. If you are peaceful and under threat, you are not alone. If you are strong and willing to protect the weak, you are welcome. If you are a predator who thinks the innocent exist for your pleasure, you will face the consequences. And throughout the galaxy, when peaceful species faced extinction, they knew they could send out a single message that would bring the ultimate protectors running to their aid. SOS. Request immediate assistance from Deathworlders. The answer always came back the same way it had that first time, when one desperate alien captain had called into the darkness and found that someone was listening. "Help is on the way. Hold on."